After many years living under the strict control of our HOA, they finally went too far. They increased my fees because of having too many cars in my own driveway. What they did not realize was that I had been quietly purchasing properties in the neighborhood for quite some time. Now it was time to demonstrate to Karen, our power-hungry HOA president, who truly controlled this community. But would she accept defeat calmly once I disclosed my secret? Welcome to my channel. Please subscribe if you enjoy stories about Karen and the HOA. I never wanted any conflicts with the HOA. Honestly, I did not. But when I saw that bright orange notice taped to my front door last Tuesday morning, I knew it was the beginning of a battle. My hands trembled as I read it. Immediate $500 fee increase monthly due to excessive vehicles on the property. 3 cars, that was the issue. My work truck that I need daily for my construction business, my wife Sarah's SUV for her hospital shifts, and the used Honda we bought for our daughter's 16th birthday last month. 3 completely normal vehicles parked in my own driveway. I watched from my kitchen window as Karen Mitchell, our HOA president, conducted her morning inspection with her small pink clipboard and measuring tape. She stopped at my driveway, took out her phone, and started snapping pictures. This was already the 3rd time that week. "Honey, she's out there again," my wife Sarah called from the living room. "Maybe we should just park the Honda in the garage," she suggested. "No," I said confidently while pouring my coffee. "We're not doing that. We are not hiding our daughter's car as if we have done something wrong. The garage is packed with Sarah's medical supplies and my work tools, just as we explained at the last homeowners meeting." I couldn't stop replaying how Karen had smirked when I tried to clarify our situation. "Rules are rules," Mr. Thompson had said without even glancing up from his phone, adding that maybe this neighborhood isn't for us if we can't afford proper garage storage. What Karen didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I had quietly been acquiring properties in our development for the past 5 years through my real estate investment company. Each time a house came up for sale, I made sure to purchase it under different LLC names. What began as a clever investment strategy had now turned into something much bigger. I stepped outside to get the mail, deliberately taking my time. Karen pretended to examine Mrs. Johnson's rose bushes while stealing glances at me. Poor Mrs. Johnson had been fined last month for having roses that were too bright, disturbing the neighborhood's color harmony. My phone vibrated with a message from my lawyer. The property closing was complete, and I now owned 67% of the development. Smiling, I slipped my phone away as Karen strode over powerfully, clutching her clipboard to her chest. "Mr. Thompson," she called in a sickly sweet tone, "I trust you received our notice about the vehicle violation?" "I did, Karen, and I have a few questions for you about it." I remained calm and professional as I questioned the legal grounds for this fee increase. She waved her hand in a dismissive manner, saying, "The board has complete authority to raise fees whenever necessary. Maybe if you attended more meetings, you'd understand how this works." Her smile never reached her eyes. Little did she realize that I had been present at every meeting for the past 5 years through proxy representatives who owned the other houses. I had quietly observed and recorded each of Karen's selective enforcements, every dubious charge, and every misuse of power. As she turned to leave, her designer heels clicking on the pavement, she called back, "Oh, and the board is calling an emergency meeting tonight at 7 p.m. sharp. We will be discussing further actions regarding problem properties." I watched her walk away, then took out my phone to text my lawyer. Time to get those documents ready as we had planned. Karen was making her move tonight. Just then, my daughter's car pulled into the driveway, and I saw Karen stop to take more photos. My blood boiled, but I stayed composed. Tonight would change everything in the neighborhood. Beforehand, I had some calls to make. I went inside and spread out the property maps on my desk. each lot meticulously highlighted and coded. 5 years of careful strategizing, gathering evidence, and watching Karen's reign of HOA terror grow worse. Tonight, she would discover that her greatest mistake was not simply targeting my family, but severely underestimating exactly who she was dealing with. My phone rang, and it was Mrs. Johnson from across the street, crying about receiving yet another violation notice. As I listened to her story, my eyes drifted to the framed photo hanging on my wall, showing my father proudly standing in front of his first house. That was before HOA harassment had forced him to sell at a loss 2 decades ago. Dad always taught me to play the long game, to fight wisely rather than with anger. I checked the time. 6 hours until the meeting. Karen was ready to take a hard stance over a few cars parked in a driveway. She had no clue what was ahead. When I walked into the meeting room at the community center, the tension was palpable. Every seat was occupied by neighbors I had known for years, sitting close together and whispering amongst themselves. Karen had truly outdone herself this time. She even hired a professional photographer to capture images of my driveway from multiple angles, making 3 ordinary cars appear like an illegal parking lot. "Let's begin," Karen declared, tapping her sparkly pink gavel on the podium. She had called this emergency meeting on a Tuesday evening, fully aware that most working families would find it difficult to attend. Still, I made sure to be there, quietly sitting in the back row and watching her put on her usual spectacle. "As you can see from these professional photographs," she said, clicking through her PowerPoint slides, "Mr. Thompson's property has turned into a used car lot." A few gasps rose from her loyal supporters in the front rows. Among those residents whose Christmas decorations remained displayed until March with no penalties, I scanned the room. Mrs. Johnson, my elderly neighbor, rolled her eyes. She had been fined last month because her grandson's car was parked in her driveway while he assisted with roof repairs. Mr. Thompson, the high school science teacher, was furiously jotting down notes after receiving a violation notice for parking his car slightly over the edge of his own driveway during the recent snowstorm. Karen clicked to the next slide, presenting a close-up photo of my daughter's vehicle. She claimed this car had been parked in the same place for more than 48 hours, neglecting to say that my daughter was home from college for the weekend. The meeting continued as Karen displayed charts alleging decreases in property values, complaints from unnamed neighbors, likely her acquaintances, and even weather reports implying that my cars caused excessive snowdrifts on the street. Moreover, she pulled out a hefty binder. I was surprised when she said, "I have recorded every single time vehicles have entered and left Mr. Thompson's property throughout the last 3 months." Several neighbors shifted uneasily in their seats at that remark. That was when Sarah Jenkins, my next-door neighbor, stood up and said, "Karen, isn't this a little over the top? They're just ordinary cars parked in an ordinary driveway." Karen's expression tightened as she retorted sharply, "You're out of order, you." I had not been acknowledged by the chair as I observed Karen's husband, Bob, beginning to distribute copies of a new proposed bylaw. This one aimed to restrict each household to 2 vehicles and mandate garage parking exclusively. The sheer ridiculousness of it nearly brought a smile to my face. Almost. "We will now proceed to vote on the new vehicle restrictions and the fee increase," Karen announced, not even permitting any discussion. Everyone was in favor, signaling my moment to speak. I slowly rose, adjusting my tie. "Point of order, Madam President." Karen's eyes narrowed sharply as she glanced at me over her reading glasses. "You are not recognized, Mr. Thompson." "Actually," I replied, producing my own folder, "according to HOA Bylaw Section 73, any property owner may raise a point of order concerning voting procedures." The room fell silent. I noticed Karen's perfectly manicured nails gripping the podium more firmly. Before we vote, I believe it is crucial to review the HOA's current property ownership structure. I began walking to the front of the room, the click of my shoes on the linoleum floor echoing. You see, over the past 5 years, Sunrise Properties has been purchasing homes within this development. Karen's face started to pale as I unveiled a large property map. As CEO of Sunrise Properties, I thought everyone might want to know exactly who holds the majority ownership in this HOA. I paused, making direct eye contact with each board member. Perhaps it would be best to discuss this after we examine these questionable surveillance activities. As you spoke, the room exploded with murmurs. From the corner of my eye, I noticed neighbors pulling out their phones to capture every moment. Karen's hand was trembling as she reached for her water, accidentally knocking over her cherished gavel. That was the moment Bob hurried to the podium, whispering something in Karen's ear. Her eyes widened as the reality finally dawned on her. She had underestimated who she was dealing with all these years. The meeting room grew silent as I stood up, my heart racing but my voice calm. Karen's confident smile began fading as I opened my leather briefcase. Before we vote on these new fees, I said, I have something crucial to reveal. I opened the briefcase and took out a thick stack of property deeds, placing them carefully, one by one, on the table. Each document was a piece of my secret strategy coming to light. The room buzzed with whispers while I laid them out in perfect rows. For the past 5 years, I continued, I have observed this HOA board ignore major maintenance problems while nitpicking at decent neighbors over trivial matters. I've seen Karen write up Mrs. Johnson, who is 82 years old, for having a flower pot that was 1 inch too tall, yet her friend Susan's bright purple fence never received a single warning. Karen's face flushed with anger. That is not true. I enforce all rules fairly, she said, grabbing her water bottle, but her hands shook so much she spilled some on her designer blouse. I then pulled up photos. On the large screen in the meeting room, there was footage of Karen measuring my lawn at 3 in the morning last Tuesday, captured by the security camera. The video quality was crystal clear, causing several people to gasp. Then there she was again, completely ignoring the Thompson family's rule violations right after they hired her son's landscaping company. Murmurs spread throughout the room as I noticed people starting to nod, recalling their own experiences with Karen's inconsistent enforcement. The most striking revelation I shared as I picked up the stack of property deeds was that through my business Sunrise Properties, I now own 67% of the houses in this community. I paused to let the weight of that information settle in, since it meant I was the majority owner of the Homeowners Association itself. Karen suddenly jumped up, knocking over her chair, and exclaimed in a high-pitched, frightened voice that it was prohibited. I smiled calmly and explained that I had consulted with 3 separate law firms, and everything was perfectly legal. Then I brought out another folder containing signed complaints from 32 residents accusing her of harassment, selective enforcement, and questionable fees. The room erupted with reaction. Mrs. Johnson stood and her voice trembled with emotion as she said that last winter she was fined $200 for not shoveling her walkway quickly enough while she was hospitalized with pneumonia. Others joined in, sharing their personal stories. Karen attempted to regain control by banging her gavel, but no one paid attention to her anymore. I then announced my motion to dissolve the current board and declared that new elections would be held with term limits and explicit rules going forward. Conflict of interest no longer existed at 3 in the morning, with no more selective enforcement. Bob Chen, from 2 doors down, raised his hand and said, "I second that motion." Soon, hands were rising all around the room. Karen grabbed her designer purse and began heading for the door. "This meeting is adjourned," she shouted. "You will be hearing from my lawyer." "Actually," I replied calmly, "according to HOA Bylaws Section 7.3, a majority vote is required to adjourn, and I do not believe you have that anymore." I gestured toward the deeds spread across the table. "We're just getting started." She froze with her hand on the doorknob, realizing her power was slipping away. 2 decades of ruling the neighborhood with an iron fist were coming to a close. "Now," I said, opening another folder, "let's discuss those mysterious pool renovation fees from last summer, the ones where $50,000 vanished, but the pool never got repaired. I have some intriguing bank records to share." Karen slumped against the wall, her face pale. She had not noticed yet, but a local news van had just pulled into the parking lot. I had invited them to cover our community reorganization meeting. The next several hours would change our neighborhood forever. But first, we had years of Karen's secrets to uncover, and I had every single receipt. My careful planning was finally bearing fruit, and the best part was yet to come. On Monday morning, I walked into my lawyer's office to find 20 angry voicemails from Karen. She had discovered my company's. Over the weekend, I reviewed the property records, and Karen threatened to sue me for allegedly trying to take over the neighborhood secretly. I couldn't help but grin because she had finally revealed her true nature. However, Karen was not just upset, she was frightened. That evening, she went door to door spreading rumors that I intended to convert our calm suburb into a massive parking area for my car collection. Some neighbors actually believed her, especially since she showed them counterfeit documents implying I had ties to a suspicious development company. I knew I needed to respond quickly. My security cameras caught Karen sneaking onto my property at midnight, taking close-up photos of my car's license plates. The following day, she filed a lawsuit claiming I had violated HOA rules by purchasing properties through my company. She even attempted to secure an emergency court order to freeze my voting rights within the HOA. That was when months of meticulous preparation finally paid off. My lawyer presented our secret weapon, a thorough record of every HOA meeting from the past 5 years. We had footage showing Karen giving her friends passes for their violations while harshly punishing others. Additionally, we had copies of checks proving she had used HOA funds to renovate her own backyard. Best of all, we had emails where she boasted about using her authority to exclude undesirable people from the neighborhood. The judge's eyes widened with every piece of evidence. Karen's face turned crimson when we revealed time-stamped footage of her measuring my grass with a ruler at 3 a.m, taking pictures of my teenage daughter's car, and leaving intimidating notes on my neighbor's doors made her lawyer nervous when we provided evidence that she had altered HOA records to conceal her friend's unpaid fees. However, the real surprise came when 3 former board members came forward and testified about how Karen had pressured them into approving unjust rules, admitted targeting certain homeowners she disliked, and even boasted about using HOA fines to finance her annual trips to Hawaii. The courtroom fell silent as we presented Karen's social media posts mocking elderly residents unable to pay their HOA charges. There she was, sharing poolside pictures from Maui with the caption thanking her rule-breaking neighbors for funding the vacation and urging them to keep the violations coming. Karen attempted to justify her actions by saying she was simply fulfilling her duties, but then we played the recording from the previous month's HOA meeting, where she shouted at Mrs. Johnson, our 75-year-old neighbor, over a bird feeder that was allegedly 2 inches too low. That was when Karen completely lost control. She stood up abruptly, pointed her finger at me, and shouted that I was trying to ruin their perfect neighborhood. She asked if we realized what sort of people would move in without strict regulations, suggesting that I wanted to turn the community into a place where people could park anywhere they pleased. The judge had heard enough. Not only did he dismiss Karen's lawsuit, but he also ordered a comprehensive audit of the HOA records. As we left the courthouse, I thought about the HOA's finances. Suddenly, my phone started buzzing with messages from neighbors. They had all gotten a mass email from Karen announcing her immediate resignation from the board, claiming that powerful money interests had forced her out. I watched her storm toward her car, already furiously typing on her phone. I knew this was not the end. Karen still had devoted followers in the neighborhood, and she was not someone to give up easily. But for now, I had what I needed. Evidence that our HOA president had been abusing her authority for years, along with the legal power to bring real change. The morning of the last court hearing began with a surprise. Karen had sent a legion of news vans to my house. She thought that public pressure would make me retreat, but instead, she gave me the perfect platform. I straightened my tie, grabbed my documents, and confidently approached the reporters with a smile. "Good morning, everyone. I'm James Thompson, and I want to share something intriguing about our HOA's financial records." I revealed the color-coded spreadsheets my accountant had prepared, detailing years of questionable fees that always seemed to fund projects benefiting Karen's closest friends. The reporter's eyes widened as I explained how Karen imposed higher violation fees on single parents than on her golf buddies. One reporter gasped when I showed footage of Karen measuring my grass at 3 a.m, while her own yard broke every rule. Karen sat inside the courthouse with her pricey lawyer, adorned in her trademark fake pearl necklace and wearing a smug grin. That grin disappeared quickly once our lawyer began presenting the evidence. We revealed photos of Karen's own house violating the rules, her brightly colored purple mailbox, the unkempt garden, and her son's 4 cars parked on the street. The judge leaned in as we exposed Karen's secret Facebook group, where she boasted about targeting specific families. "Let's see how long the Thompsons last with these new fees," she had written. "Maybe they will finally move and sell to someone more suitable." Karen jumped up to object, but froze when we played the recording from last week's pool party. Her voice echoed clearly in the courtroom as she said, "Of course I make up violations. How else can we control who lives here?" The judge banged the gavel decisively. Karen was not only removed from the HOA board, but also ordered to repay every unjust fee she had collected. The shock on her face when she heard the total, $1,478.92, was sweeter than any revenge I could have planned. Using my majority ownership, I established a new HOA board with a fresh vision. We elected 5 residents from various parts of the neighborhood, including Mrs. Johnson, whom Karen had targeted for cooking ethnic food, and Mr. Chen, whose stunning garden Karen had labeled too exotic. Changes came quickly. Children were now allowed to play basketball in their driveways, and gardens could grow vegetables freely. Not only flowers, but families could park more than 2 cars as long as they fit within their own space. 3 weeks later, I watched from my window as Karen's moving truck arrived. She had sent a final letter to everyone announcing she was relocating to a neighborhood with higher standards. It was hard to miss the parking ticket from her new HOA stuck on her windshield as she drove off. That evening, my daughter parked her car in our driveway, right beside my work truck and my wife's SUV. I put up a small sign we had all agreed on. "Welcome to Thompson Hills, where good neighbors create great communities." The next morning, I received an unexpected call from a TV producer who had seen the news story and wanted to make a documentary about how we transformed our HOA. Looking outside at children playing in their yards and neighbors chatting across garden fences, I smiled, imagining Karen watching from her new home with a strict 1-car garage rule. The best part was that our property values increased by 15% in the month after Karen left. It seems people truly prefer living in a neighborhood where they are treated with kindness rather than controlled by fear. Some of Karen's former friends even came by to apologize, admitting they had been afraid of becoming her next target. We still have an HOA, but now it serves to protect the community, not to police it. Each month, the fees go toward things that really matter, such as improving the playground, repairing the pool, and providing support where needed. Senior residents take care of their homes. We even began a community garden in the place where Karen once captured photos of her yard violets. While I organize the final court papers, my phone vibrates with a message. It is from Karen's new neighborhood watch team. They are seeking guidance on handling their own power-hungry HOA leader. I recline in my chair, reflecting on how sometimes the greatest form of payback is not revenge itself, but inspiring others to defend their rights.